And the moment I touched the ball, it rolled and I lost my balance and I fell in the tank.
Right.
The first feeling there was like, people think that because I am from Colombia, they have the misconception that I come from hot weather country. But Bogota is very high up in the Andes. So it's like about 9,000 feet up there. So the temperature is early in the morning, can be pretty cold at times. So maybe the temperature in this tank was about 30, 40 degrees Fahrenheit. So the moment I fell in the tank, imagine the feeling was this water was frigid, cold. And the temperature of the water shook me. Like at that very moment, I even felt that my breathing was just stopped. And it came the realization. So after that horrible sensation of the cold water, now was the terrifying sensation of why I cannot breathe. I had never been in a pool. I never had my head under the water. So I didn't know that if you fall in the water, you drown. So imagine this absolute horror when I have that feeling why I cannot breathe. And then is this desperate attempt to get out of this water, but I didn't know how to swim. And then I sank in the tank. And then it's when I would just say the magic, the miracle happened. And it was
This is Dale Cross, and welcome to another edition of the Soul Inspire podcast. This is the audio-video podcast that features spiritually uplifting stories from awakening souls to help inspire you on your own soul journey. On this episode, my guest is Ingrid Honkala, PhD, marine biologist, former NASA oceanographer, and international speaker who's had multiple spiritual transformative experiences. Can't wait to hear about those, including 3 near-death experiences, 1 in childhood and 2 in adulthood, and many other close encounters with death. Ingrid, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Dale, for having me here. It's such an honor. An honor. Thank you.
The honor's all ours. Thank you so much. Ingrid, why don't we start off with my favorite question, which is, can you tell me a little bit about your spiritual background in childhood? Did you have any kind of spiritual background, or tell us about that?
I mean, my whole, let's call it, path of realizing who I was, my path of spirituality started to unfold for me in a way I think nobody ever expected. I died.
Wow.
I had a near-death experience when I was close to 3 years old. So that was my first NDE. And what happened back then is I was born in Bogota, Colombia. And my parents would leave for work very early in the morning and would leave us in the house at the care of a maid. And she was a lady that really didn't pay attention to us when my parents were not around. And I had 2 more sisters. And one day early in the morning, my parents left as usual. She went to do her thing. And my oldest sister, she was close to 4. I was close to 3, and the 2 of us decided, let's go play in the patio. And the problem about the patio is that there was a big tank. And the purpose of this tank was to collect water for hand washing clothes. But this was really a deep tank, like it held about 900 gallons of water. And my oldest sister and I decided, let's play cash across the tank. So just that. And then we climbed the walls of the tank and we started to throw the ball at each other. And then she threw the ball, didn't apply enough force, fell on the water. She was sitting on the flat surface for scrubbing, which was a little safer back then. early 70s, we didn't have the washing machine.
Mm.
And then I was in the other side of the tank where there was a thin edge. So when she threw the ball and it fell on the surface of the water, it was floating.
Mm-hmm.
And I leaned forward thinking, oh, I can grab it. And the moment I touched the ball, it rolled and I lost my balance and I fell in the tank.
Right.
The first feeling there was like, people think that because I am from Colombia, they have the misconception that I come from hot weather country. But Bogota is very high up in the Andes.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like about 9,000 feet up there. So
Wow.
the temperature is early in the morning, can be pretty cold at times. So maybe the temperature in this tank was about 30, 40 degrees Fahrenheit. So the moment I fell in the tank, imagine the feeling was this water was frigid, cold. And the temperature of the water shook me. Like at that very moment, I even felt that my breathing was just stopped. And it came the realization. So after that horrible sensation of the cold water, now was the terrifying sensation of why I cannot breathe. I had never been in a pool. I never had my head under the water. So I didn't know that if you fall in the water, you drown. So imagine this absolute horror when I have that feeling why I cannot breathe. And then is this desperate attempt to get out of this water, but I didn't know how to swim. And then I sank in the tank.
Wow.
And then it's when I would just say the magic, the miracle happened. And it was the miracle in the sense of looking within, because at that very moment, there was many miracles that happened throughout this experience. But the first one was the sense of like in just a blink like that, I went from a state of complete terror to one of absolute peace. It was peace and calmness and serenity and just, and I didn't know what had happened because just a second ago I was in complete horror and now I was in absolute peace. And it was that moment when you just realize there's nothing I have to do. There's nowhere I have to go. Nothing is really happening. I don't need to breathe. I didn't know why. And people always ask me, like, how can you remember this experience if you were so young? Just 2 years old. But is that in itself? I said, how can I forget that? And also, I just have to say that throughout this experience, besides that contrast, there was many more. One of the things that happened the moment I drowned was that this tank was entirely made of cement, was a very dark area. There was a roof on top, early in the morning. So the last thing I saw with my eyes open was the darkness of the space. And also at that very moment in which I passed from terror to peace, I was in just this atmosphere of darkness. It was dark, not darkness of anything negative, but it was dark. And then this is the other incredible thing that happened. At that very moment, light, this very beautiful, it was a soft light, like the light of a candle, and it came from below. But this light was able to illuminate the whole watery surrounding. So imagine it was going from being in a space that was dark to light. So now it was like, now there is light. The other thing I experienced is that I live in a house that was very noisy. We have dogs, birds, my sisters, my cousin. It was noise. And also the last thing I heard when I was drowning was my heart beating so loud. Imagine when you are terrorized in a moment of so much horror, your heart is like almost getting out of your chest, and I could hear it in my head like a drum. And then the moment I enter into that space of calmness and joy and peace and tranquility, silence. It was the most beautiful and incredible silence you can imagine, because it came with that peace, with that serenity, with that nothing is happening anymore. And then that silence was so incredibly amazing, Dale, that I call it the silence behind the silence. And I craved this silence for the rest of my life. So even after the experience as a little child, I will hide in closets, I will go under the bed, I will go in chapels. I wanted that silence back. And I think that was one of the doors that opened my path of spirituality, the search of that, we call it now stillness, presence, peace, silence. So that is the other contrast. Then now I am in this space of light and calmness and this incredible peace when I started to see bubbles. And these bubbles were surrounded by light. And that was all so much fun and beauty. And it's when I saw these bubbles, I said, I decided to chase the bubbles. And it's when I turned around and I saw a body in the water. And I had the clear realization that is my body. And at that moment, the incredible thing is that I didn't feel any sense of fear. It was just the sense of, oh, that's normal. Like if it was a familiar thing, like, oh, yeah, that's my body. And then it comes the other contrast, and is that I was born as a very sick child. And I spent almost 3 years of my life feeling sick. I didn't tell up to this point of my life, up to that moment, I didn't know anything else than being sick. So imagine at this moment, for the first time, I am knowing well-being. So what do you think happened? The moment I saw the body, I'm like, oh no, I'm not going back there. Oh no.
Right.
And I turned around and I left the body behind. And the moment I turned around, I started to see flowers. And these flowers were blooming from nowhere. And then even the sense of dimension disappeared the moment I was picked by the flowers. And then now I'm being carried. So there's nothing you have to do. And I always say it's like going back to the womb, but you don't have anything, you're just being done.
Right.
And then I'm like floating and being held by these flowers. I am in the state of absolute bliss.
Right.
And then something just very unexpected happened. And it's just that just like that, a blink, I appear in the maid's room. And I was looking at her from above, like, oh, that's Maria. And Maria was completely unaware of what was happening. She was listening to soap operas in the radio. And then, because nothing happened right there, in like a flash, in another very fast movement, I appear in my mom's path. My mom, like I said, she left for work very early. She didn't have a car, and she had to walk to her bus stop, and it was a few blocks before she could get there. And she was close to her bus station when I was floating above her. And then I'm looking at my mom from above, and I'm like, this is the thing that what happened now, like I call miracles in this experience is that first, validate the experience. And second, I think this is what blows everybody's minds away. And is that the moment I said, "Oh, that's mom," she stopped. She did not keep walking. She did not. Immediately she knew that something is happening at home with one of my girls.
Mm-hmm.
And this is, I always like to give this little background information, and it was that my mom had got a new job. What is the mind, or what you are propelled to do? I have to go to my new job no matter what. No, she did not. She did not think about anything else. She turned around and started to run back home. That's how compelled this call was. And then at that moment, I looked at my mom and I'm like, "Oh, I wonder why is she running?" And then she's running. Then at the moment I'm looking at her, I change my view, and then I see a dog at the end of the street, and I love animals. So the moment I feel the desire to be with the dog, I am with the dog. So, wow, this is kind of cool. So I changed my view and I see a park. And the moment I feel the desire to be in the park, I am in the park. Oh, I thought it's so fascinating. And I started to play a game of just going places. So it's like, imagine like time and space, the way we know it, really changed. And then now it could be anywhere, anytime. And when I am playing this game in like another flash like that, I appear in a realm. And it was a realm that was made of pure, bright, intense, shiny light. And it was at that moment that I felt for the first time in the almost 3 years of my life, I am home. I am home. That sense of being at home, the sense of being embraced and welcome and comfortable and knowing is that sense of I know this. So this is another interesting thing, that although I had seen my body in the water, floating in that tank, up to this moment, I didn't have the realization, I am not that. And it's when I said, I am not that body. I am not that. And it's when I realized myself as a being of light. And from here, I started to have that sense of dissolving, connecting with everything. But I was still having a sense of self. But even this sense of self at some point vanished. And it's when I felt that, this is the part where I always lack words to describe what happened, but I call it nothingness. Some people call it non-self, some people call it the emptiness, the vacuum. I call it nothingness because and the example I can give you, or the analogy I can give you, is imagine a huge stadium. And in the middle of the stadium, there is a little tiny, tiny box. And all you think you knew about you was that little tiny box. And suddenly the box opens and you realize nothing, because it's nothing I thought I was. But at the same time, wholeness, totality is experiencing which what you know as sound, movement, description, nothing is like the way we really have experienced it. The only thing I can say about that state of being is complete presence and pure consciousness. And if I can talk about any kind of emotion, we could even refer, which is not really an emotion, it's a universal principle, was the state of bliss.
Mhm.
Lately talking to, and the more I go deeper into what is that I experience, how, and I talk to people and I talk about this experience. Someone told me lately, because they always ask me about God, and I said, because I didn't know the concept of God when I was 2, then I could not talk about God, but was like completely being embraced by the light, embraced by mother, father, universal consciousness. When I talk about it, it's like, imagine a little baby. When the baby, even the baby has its own individuality, and you have your own soul. Imagine when the baby is embraced by the mother, the father, and the baby completely loses himself in the arms of the mom and the dad. It doesn't even know the difference. There's not this you and me, there's only this connection. Right. So I was in that state of complete connection, the divine with the totality, with the light. So imagine that state of beingness is like absolute pure bliss. And then now later we call it as love, as whatever other names we want to give it, but it's just that state of complete and total connection. Bliss. So when I am in that state of being, my mom finally arrived home. And this is the other thing there, like we live in a big house, and if she would have wasted time in any other room, of course the body cannot, it's the part of our physicality will perish, but my mom knew exactly where to go. And she directed herself to the back of the house. So tell me, this is not incredible. Like, she had that knowing. And she went there, and this is the other thing, my sister was still there. And she was trying to help me to get out of the tank. And people asked me why she didn't go to the maid, because we did not supposed to be in that patio, playing in that tank. So, for children, it's like, of course, I don't want to be punished. So she was trying to help me out. And then when she saw my mom, she said, Mom, Ingrid is there and I cannot get her. So that was the validation of like, go do something. And my mom jumped in the tank. She pulled me out of the water. She said, like, I was like a raggedy doll, no pulse, no breathing. The lips were purple, like the blue tips of the fingers, completely pale. And then now, this amazing synchronicity, my mom she worked with children, and she had some training to do CPR for children. So she knew what to do. So this is just incredible. And then she started to do all she knew to bring me back. And I was in my bliss out there. I did not feel absolutely anything she was doing. I was completely disconnected from this body, from this reality. And the only thing is that suddenly, like everything in this experience just happened like that, I felt that I had jumped from the tallest building in the world. Why I say that? Because it's like when you jump from a very, very high point and you get this sense of vacuum. Like I felt that I had fallen from a very, very high place, and I felt that I was being pulled, that I was being vacuumed back. And there was nothing I could do to stop it. And it was that sense of like, no. I was really fighting it. I did not want to come back. Imagine, I said to people, because they're like, how come you didn't want to come back and why? And I said, no, because imagine you take a child to an amusement park. The child is having all the fun in the world. And now you say we have to go? Who wants to go? Yeah. So, of course, the moment I'm back in my body, I am very angry. And I'm very disappointed. I could not see that my mom saved me or nothing. To me, it was like, what are you doing? You got me out of my bliss. So after that, we were in a lot of trouble, or my family, me, because I was very angry. I didn't want to be here. And then I became very rebellious. I refused to eat. I just was angry, and I didn't really want to be here. So what happened also there is that people ask me about the before and after. I mean, I was just a little child, but there was definitely a before and after. And I came back clearly with a consciousness I didn't have before. And when I saw my parents, and when I would look at my parents, I had that clarity in my head. These are not just my biological parents. I have experienced oneness, and I felt them as my equal. I experienced unity. And then when I would look at them, I said, why do I have to listen to these people? So I became rebellious in that sense. And the other thing was like, I would look at myself in the mirror and say, I am not this child. I am not a child. And I will cry and tell my mom, I'm not this body. I'm not this name. I am not this child. So I never felt like a child again. And when I would look at other children, I'll be like, what is happening to that people? They don't know anything. So I could not relate with children. And I tried with adults, and it was like, what is happening to these people? They don't know anything either. So that was really, really difficult. And to also prove that this child came with a consciousness or a state of mental state that was different is that I'm just about to be 3 years old. And now after the experience, not long after, they started to see that I had the abilities of being able to read, write, resolve mathematical problems, put together complex puzzles, paint. So all this was just showing up to me. So incredibly, what came after was what I would just say saved me from the demise. And it was that one, my mom was a very compassionate being, very, very loving, open person. But I started to communicate with what I call beings of light. And that's what actually made my childhood and my experiences after that kind of become a little bit more, let's call it, aligned or stable, because up to that moment, I was just really suffering. And then what happened is that after my NDE, I also started to have what we know today as out-of-body experiences. And then I would have, at the beginning, pretty disturbing feelings of movements I have never experienced here, sounds, colors, frequencies, and then I will go back to the realm of the light. But I loved it because I'm back to the light. I'm back to the light. And now I wanted to sleep all the time. Of course, my parents fired that lady that wasn't paying attention and let me drown in the tank. But they hired a new one, and she didn't have to pay much attention to me because I was sleeping. And that was good because I would go asleep and I would have these incredible experiences with the light. And it was in one of those journeys that I started to see lights that were shining in all different colors, all different sizes. And they were as infinite as when you walk outside and you see the sky at night. It was like infinite amount of lights, but it was all in this light surrounding environment. And then in another one of these journeys, one of these beings that was shining in gold approached me, and it shaped itself into a human form and touched me. And it's when I said, oh, you are a being of light. Just the language, yeah, this is a being and it's made of light. So I call them beings of light. And then from that experience, I woke up. But there was a moment where, imagine, I wanted to sleep all the time. So, of course, I could not be the child that was sleeping all the time. So, this had to come to some kind of balance. And then it was when one day I now close to 4 years old, I'm close to 4 years old, and I'm taking a shower. And it's when a blue, intense, shiny light appears in the bathroom. And it's when I said, oh, now the beings of light are here. And I started to see them everywhere from that point on. And it's when I started to feel the sense of, oh, I'm not alone. The sense of home, the sense of, and later in my life, I understood that sense, that idea, that feeling of being home here was something really, really important, because later in my life was the realization, yeah, home is not a place, it's a state of being. So now seeing the beings of light here made me feel the sense I wanted to play with my sisters, I wanted to eat, I wanted to be here. See, I didn't have to go there to have that feeling of home. Now I was feeling it here. And up to this point, the beings of light didn't say anything. I just could see them. I could feel them. I could smell. Every time there was a lot of beings of light around, and the smell of flowers was incredible. So the moment I hear them for the first time was a time that I threw a big tantrum. And what happened was that they were calling my name, and I didn't feel identified with my name. There was this detachment. And then when they were calling me, the lady came, Ingrid, that we're calling you. And I just get aggravated, like, don't call me like that. That's not my name. And she said to me, then what? How should I call you? What is your name? And I turned to her and I said, I do not need one. And then, of course, this is like, what is with this child? They send me to bed because, come on, you're just throwing these tantrums. And then I was crying. And it's when I heard for the first time voice. And it was the most loving and compassionate and calming voice that said to me, it's going to take time for them to understand that names are not needed in the realm of the light. Mm-hmm. And it's when I, like you already know, they say when I have the sense, oh, I am not crazy. I know now why I don't need a name. So it was just this sense of peace within myself. And of course, later I understood that names are needed in our human experience, that they're beautiful, they carry energy, whatever. But it was that knowing in the realm of the light, labels are not needed. And then other two things were said to me that day. One, all the experiences that you're having and the experiences that you are going to have, someday you will share with others. But don't talk about this now because they're not going to understand. And in my mind, as a 4-year-old, it was like, what is not to understand? Like, what? What are you talking about? But of course, soon I realized the more I tried to speak about it or say anything, especially being a child, that those people will be like, oh, she has a great imagination. She's dreaming. She's making stories. So yeah, I realized, nobody really believed me. And then, but they say also to me that I was never going to be alone. And there will be people in my path who were going to guide me and help me. And they were very right. The very first person that was open and that validated my experiences was my mom. And this happened pretty clearly when I joined the kindergarten. 5 years old. And then one thing is that the beings of light told me not to talk about them, but they never told me not to paint about them. I always say that. So I just started to paint beings of light everywhere. As a child, I had to express these that are, children, you need to express these that you're experiencing somehow. And then I started to paint beings of light everywhere. And it's when the teacher came to me curious and said, are these here the sun, the stars? And I turned and I looked at her and I said, no, these are my friends, the beings of light. And the teacher was like, whoa. They already thought that I was a different kind of child. I was very quiet, very in my own space. And then she's like, we have to call your parents. My mom came to school and they were looking at the pictures. And then is when another realization happened, and is that all my pictures had auras very, very clearly painted around. And is when we also realized that I could see what we know as auras. And then I didn't know people couldn't see this. It was normal to me. So when they're looking at all these pictures, I turned to my mom with that sense of I needed someone to believe me. And I said, Mom, these are the colors that we wear, and these are my friends, the beings of light. And my mom looked at me with these mom eyes like, be quiet. She was a teacher. She didn't want me to be in trouble at a school. So at that moment, I went quiet. And then she told the teacher, this is just a phase. Nothing is happening. We go home. And then, of course, I was very sad, thinking no one believes me. And it was on the way to our home that my mom said to me, I believe you. And she said, I believe you because I also see things that others cannot see. So it's when she confessed to me that she could see what we know as spirits. And then I didn't even know what a spirit was. And she just told me that. And I said, why people was afraid of this? Because she told me, she validated what the being Solar said to me. She said, don't talk to anybody. Because people are afraid of the unknown. So they are afraid of the things they cannot really normally see or explain. So yeah, and then from there, I had to grow up keeping this just for us. And then when you ask me about spirituality, because up to this point, all these, are experiences that are happening in my life. And if we keep it just as experience, then it's just one more thing. But the idea and the teachings I receive in my life is not about the experience, but what is behind the experience, what is it for. And thankfully, my grandmother, my mother was a very spiritual lady. She was raised as Catholic, but she was a very rebellious person too. And she always felt the sense there's more, there has to be more. And she started to go deep into, and that was very rare back then and very unheard of, especially Colombia, that was 98% Catholic. It was very different to find a person that was seeking something else. And my grandmother joined an order called the Rosicrucian Order, and started to study deeply more. And then she learned about Hinduism and Buddhism and Kabbalah and the chakras. She was exploring everything. And she brought these teachings to our home. She didn't live in Colombia. She would come to visit, and is the person that opened for me that door. She was the one that taught me how to meditate. And when she started to talk about these things with my parents, I was just there and I was like, Grandma talked like the beings of light. And then it was with my grandma that we established this incredible relationship, and she guided me through the path of spirituality. And incredibly, when she taught me how to meditate, she taught me the Om. And at 8 years old, I had my first Kundalini experience. So thankfully my grandmother was there and she kept guiding me through time. And yeah, that's how my path of spirituality happened.
Incredible.
Started to open.
That's beautiful. So, when you were taught how to meditate, did you find that when you were meditating, it was able to come close to or reproduce the same silence and peace that you had during the NDE? Do you see the similarity? Were you able to enter into that, or are you still able to enter into that silence when you meditate now? This is the same as the NDE, would you say? Or what's the quality like?
Yes. It's very powerful, but reaching a state of, wow, of complete detachment like that is hard to experience. And for me, that's been the process of realizing from that moment on, I am a soul. I am a soul. And yeah, a body is we have heard this is we're just having a human experience. Is
Yes.
just, but it's learning to play that game of being wave and being matter, of being divine and being human, of being form and no form.
Yes.
But it took me time because I didn't know how to reach that space of silence like that. But growing up, meditation helped a lot. And there was a moment, I'm glad you asked me this question, Del, because there was a moment where now I was about 12 years, I was about to be 12, and I felt very troubled because I was very different from everyone else. Right. So imagine growing up is different when you're an adult and you have these experiences. When you're a child, and on top of that, the people around you don't understand what you're talking about, never have had an experience like this. There's no one to relate, not even my grandmother. She knew a lot of stuff at the mental level, but not at the experiential level. I said it's very different to know everything about oranges, the chemistry of the oranges, the physiology. You can write a whole PhD about oranges and how to make orange juice.
Yeah.
But if you never drink it, you really don't know it. In my case, I have drunk the whole glass.
Yeah, that's right.
So I already had experienced these things, but I felt troubled because no one else around me did, and I didn't feel connected. And at that point, I didn't understand, and I would cry to God and say, why did you brought me back here with no manual? So it was difficult. I was troubled. And when I was 12 years old, I told my grandmother that I wanted to die because I wanted to go back. And then my grandma, of course, she was very distraught about this. And then for my 12-year-old birthday, she had a present for me. She took me to this little Zen Buddhist temple, which in Colombia was unheard. And this little Buddhist temple was in the middle of this neighborhood, and my grandma took me there. And the moment I entered in this space, I felt so peaceful. I felt it too when I was in church. When I did my first communion, my love for God there is such that, and I was intoxicated by his light, by his presence. When I was 9 years old, I wanted to be a nun because I thought that was the way. So you only know what the world is showing you. I didn't know. No. That's what I knew within. All these amazing things, but the world out there was not helping me to let's call it there was not a two-way at that moment understanding of what was happening. So when I was going to a Catholic school, and I realized, no, being a nun is not the answer, because I didn't see like the things I saw. The priest talk about fear, and when I went to church, I said, what do you mean to fear God when God is the one that loves us the most?
Right.
And the priest got mad at me and he said, "You don't know what you're talking, child. Sit there and pray." How can
Right.
those are the words of the devil also, because how can you not fear God? So it
Wow.
was very disrupting for me. I didn't have understanding why is this world this way. So of course I wanted to leave. So when my grandma took me to the Zen Buddhist temple, it was quiet. It was serene. It was the smell of incense. The whole thing was just. And then they taught me this meditation, because up to this point, my grandma had taught me, but it was always more like in the church, and everything was more the prayer thing. So when I went into this first breathing meditation technique, and I just fell in such a state of connection. And when I was going to leave this little temple, I said to the monk, "My grandma is a very, very busy person. I don't think I can come back to the temple."
Mm-hmm.
And he said to me, "Child, you never need to come back to the temple." And I said, "What do you mean?" And he said, "Because you already have a temple."
Mm-hmm.
And I said, "What?" And he said, "What are you talking about?" And he said, "You are the temple." See,
Wow.
because at that point I wanted to abandon this vessel. I didn't want to be here. And he said, "You are the temple."
Mm-hmm.
So wherever you are, you can bring this meditation with you. That silence is within you. So wow, when he opened that door for me, for that understanding, that changed everything. So yeah, I started to be able to experience or be closer to that silence,
Okay.
knowing I don't have to really leave or go anywhere.
So it sounds to me like you have found a way to balance the zero and the one. Are you familiar with the idea of the zero and the one? Zero would be that complete silence, nothingness, empty nothingness. And then the one is the humanness, the human side of things. And you said it's very important. So it sounds to me like you found a way to balance those and to bring the heaven down to earth through your body temple. So, in other words, not denying the body because this is a vehicle to express your divinity in the world, right? So the body is so important too. So you found a
Yeah.
way to straddle both sides, right? To
Yes,
integrate
yes.
both, because it sounds like when people first go through these, I interview a lot of people on the show with near-death experiences, and it sounds to me like a lot of people, when they first have a near-death experience and they come back, they're very devastated and depressed because, oh, I want to go back to the zero. I want to go back there. But it seems like, no, but you chose to incarnate, to have an experience and to express your divinity through this beautiful temple.
Yes, and you know how I call it? I love how you're putting it, the words that you're using, because I call it a dance.
A dance. Very
The
good.
stillness and movement are
Mm,
dancing together.
very good.
And we have to learn to find that place of rhythm,
Yes.
middle line, the place of how I balance the divinity and the humanity. That's what we're called human being.
There we
The
go.
beingness.
Yeah, not human doings, human
Not human
beings.
doings, exactly, the form and the no form. So to the point that here's when I would like to talk about my last near-death experience, because
Okay.
that's when I had even that place where I was able to finally integrate and bring that truth you're talking about to really live it. And that's where I am today in my life, because I was in trouble for many years trying to balance, like I think all of us are. And then when I had my last near death experience happen, it's going to be, I think, 2 years or almost three when that happened. And I was before the experience happened, I had a warning. Like I knew something was going to happen.
Mm.
And then in that whole warning, that was beautiful, because I when I heard through time, this is before I go there, this is the other thing, is like when I talk about the beings of light, it's like imagine you go from and you change teachers through time. I started with certain teachers, and as things evolve, you go from the teachers of kindergarten, first grade, college, and then my communication with, let's call it source, God, the divine, the universal consciousness now have become direct.
Mm-hmm.
And that happened especially during my last near-death experience, when I heard that clear voice that says, "Do you trust me?"
Mm.
And I said, "Yes, I do," because I knew something was about to happen. And the moment I say, "Yes, I do," the sense of dread and fear, everything I had because I knew something was going to happen, was gone.
Wow, that's incredible.
Completely gone. And it's when I heard the words that says, "You are in sync with God."
Mm.
And then after 3 days, after the very next day, that night, I didn't sleep the whole night. I woke up and I was in such a state of connection there that I would look at my hands and just say, "Oh." But I wasn't just thinking about Ingrid's hands. I was thinking about everyone's, and like, these are the hands of God. I am an extension of the Father. This is, and I'm just seeing the miracle and the divine in everything. And then 5 days after this, I was in like a very, very horrendous car accident.
All right. Oh, okay.
And in the car accident, we were hit by another car, and our car flew. I mean, just because of the abilities of my husband, the car didn't get completely destroyed, but it was totaled. And then I'm sitting in this car and remember when I said, "I trust you," and everything was gone.
Yeah.
This is a moment where you should be maybe crying, screaming, scared, whatever it is that an accident like this will cause.
Yeah.
I was in the state of absolute and complete compassion.
Wow.
And when I would look at the people that was other cars stop, my husband, so I saw anger, I saw all the emotions that are out there, and when people don't understand, and pain, whatever, and everything I saw it with the eyes of compassion. And I said to people, I was not thinking compassion. I was the embodiment of compassion. It was coming, it was pouring out of me. And then I didn't know why that person hit our car, and the person stopped in front of us. It was a big truck. He came out of the car, and I just felt compassion. And later I learned that this person, he had fallen asleep. And that's, he only woke up when he hit our car.
Right.
But that was just amazing. And I didn't want to go to the hospital, because in that state of being, I didn't feel the need of anything. But next day, I realized my body had been somehow damaged and I needed a hospital. So I ended up in the hospital. And because of this accident, something that was really non-related with the accident, but due to the accident, I was needing some surgery, but I was postponing this surgery. I really didn't want to have the surgery. I thought I could heal without the surgery. But because of the accident, now this surgery needed to happen.
Right.
So I guess things that need to happen for other things to reveal to us. So I had to go to this surgery. And it was during this surgery that supposed not to be too difficult of a surgery. Before the surgery, again, now I knew, remember, I knew all the time that something was going to happen. I told the doctor, "You have to monitor my blood pressure. You have to monitor my blood pressure." And the doctor called the anesthesiologist, because I was just very adamant. And then they said, okay, we will monitor your blood pressure. And during the surgery, my blood pressure dropped to the ground and I went into hypothermia.
Mm.
And at that moment, I entered the light again.
Mm.
And you know, this is one thing I said there, like when people have had more than one near-death experience, and I have heard it in other cases, like you don't go through all the narrative and the story and you meet people. No, this time I didn't need to go through anything, see anything. I was just directly in the light, like cut with the chase. Just you're there.
And so no tunnel of light that you had to go through. You were already there.
I was already there. So I'm completely in the light. And for the first time, like I said, this was my third experience like that. And in the other two, I was never asked if I wanted to come back. Or that was not time for me to come back. I was never asked anything. I was just back. It was in this experience for the first time I was asked if I wanted to stay or I wanted to go.
So you had a choice. They gave you a choice?
They gave me a choice.
Okay.
And then the moment I heard you want to stay, it was like, again, that heaven, home. It was like, of course I want to stay. I said to people, imagine that they show you a 10-diamond resort. Of course you want to stay, all inclusive with everything. You know?
Right.
This is amazing. But then when I heard the words, or you want to go back, something clicked right there. And I said, wait a minute. I think this is, it's because I've been meditating and I've been in that presence and in that state of consciousness all my life, being there, being present. So at that moment, I have the absolute awareness and I said, wait a minute. If God is everywhere, and everything is a manifestation of consciousness, and everything brings me to remember God, then where is here and where is there? At that moment, I had that clarity. There is no here and there is not there.
Wow. That's pretty profound.
Yes. So the only thing I said at that moment was, keep me where I can serve God the most.
Oh, beautiful.
And then at that moment, up to that point, when you're in a state like this, because I have had experiences that people call samadhi experiences, experiences of unity and oneness many times. You are in the state of no judgment, state of complete surrender, state of complete detachment. So it took me a little time to tell to my husband and my family this experience, because I just felt a little bit bad because I did not feel any attachment to anything or anyone whatsoever. Not that you don't love, is that you understand that everything is the way it is, that everything is all right, that everything is organized, that everything, that even if I wasn't there, that would be the experience of my son to be that way, or my family, or my husband. It was irrelevant. Nothing was really happening.
Wow. Cool.
And then, yeah, so there was not attachment whatsoever to anything. Only when I said, keep me where I can serve God the most, is when I felt the sense of, my son, my husband, my this, my that. An anchor that bring me back.
Right.
There's nothing. You accept anything because it's not different. To me, it's like, I'm already with God. I'm already in God. I'm already in the presence. I'm already home. So it doesn't matter. And again, it was that complete knowing. Home is not a place, it's a state of being. So now I am back here, and wow, it was that complete sense of how can I live my life in service? How can I live my life at using every single moment to just be alive and connected and joyful and blissful? Doesn't mean that challenge doesn't happen. Yes, challenge is part of all of it. I said, it's not about, for challenge, I said to people, the enlightened and awakened person is not the one that wants. So imagine the ocean produces waves, and that's the nature of the ocean. So it's not about stopping the nature of the ocean. It's about learning to be with it. It's not about stopping the waves. It's about learning to surf the waves. So it's how can I just be part of everything fully? How can I use all the whole of it to discover and go deeper in the essence that I am, and correct and keep correcting the things I have to correct about myself, and deepening, in expanding, in growing, and evolving, and experiencing that oneness with everything here and now. So it's like at the end, I was like, it's not about dying, it's about living.
About living, I love it.
It's not about near that experience, it's about near life experience.
That's really good, because so many spiritual teachings out there that I've come across over the years are all about dying to myself and getting rid of this bad habit and blah, blah, blah. And it's like die, die, die. And you're saying, no, it's about living. It's about life. I love it.
And be with everything.
And, yeah,
nowadays, if there's fear, I'm like, come on, fear, talk to me. Creating a space. It's about integrating and including. Inclusion, we're talking, comes from within.
Right.
If I'm able to include it all, if I'm able to connect with all, if I'm able to love the diversity of life, then I'm already
loving it all, right?
living it all as it is, without having to change it. Instead of changing my prayer every day, my prayer there is not like, God, change this, change that for my own benefit, change. No, it's help me understand.
Great.
What about changing things? Because if the world is presenting certain ways, because it's trying to tell me something.
Yes.
So instead of wasting my time trying to change things, is how can I have clarity about this? God, help me see, because I cannot see. My prayer is, God, give me clarity. And my other prayer is, God, don't let me forget you. Help me remember you. Help me remember you. And be at service. Be at service. One of the last experiences I have, I was in deep meditation, Dale, and I said, I'm thinking about service, and I'm thinking, God, I serve you. I'm thinking this sense of I serve you. And it's when the voice came and said, no, you serve no one. You do not serve me, because remember, God is the ultimate bestower. God doesn't need that we serve or do anything. He said, you are service itself. Service itself.
Fantastic. Yeah, because religion teaches us that we have to appease a God outside of us, that we have to merit, we have to earn, we're less than, we're not enough. This kind of religion can be religion has some good points, but it can also be very traumatizing for people too, because we already are worthy. We already are enough.
So it's that you are service itself.
Service itself. Very good.
It's a principle. Service is a universal principle. We are already that.
Right. So there's no need to strive, because this is effortless perfection, isn't it? The effortless perfection.
Just let it be. Surrender to what you already are.
Very good. Very good. Very good. So now I want to ask you this. How did your husband, is your family on board with you say you've had 3 near-death experiences, right? That's what you explained. How has your family reacted to that? How has your husband reacted? Is he on the same page as you are on this stuff?
Yes. First, my family, my parents, sisters, I grew up. This has been me all my life. So
Okay.
sooner or later, I was the one that brought them all to meditate. I was growing up. It was I joined transcendental meditation. Then my grandmother made a group called the Agni Yoga, where we practice. And I was 9 years old when I was reading the Bhagavad Gita.
Wow.
So I brought all my family. I would got the books and everything. So through time, my dad said, "No, that I've been like the teacher for all of them." So my family is of course on board with who I am and what there's more a story here because I became a scientist and
right. Yeah.
big entities like NASA, Colombian Navy, US Navy. I became very successful in my career. So for my family, it's like they've been just with me all the way. And I had the chance to travel the world. So I've been in 64 countries of the world.
64. That's incredible. That's great. So you've had quite an adventurous life until this point.
Yes. And you know why? Because when you die, you lose the fear of death.
Oh, okay. You mean when you cross over, you no longer have a fear of death. So now you can live fearlessly in this life.
Yes, you're more up to do things, to travel, to go places. I have been in many places of the world by myself. They're like, you're a woman. How could you be here by yourself? Because I'm never alone.
That's right.
So all this happened. And with my husband, that was a different story because I met him when I was a scientist.
Okay.
And I wasn't really talking openly, although in the core of my being, I've always been who I am. I wasn't just, I knew and had clarity that how you communicate with people has to be at the level of their consciousness.
Yes,
so
yes,
I met my husband in a war zone.
Mm-hmm.
I was living in a war zone. And also, I have to tell you, Dale, for a while, I walk away from what we call the path of spirituality in the outer world. I always kept my principles inside, but I stepped away because it was very hard growing up again. Like there was a moment where I felt I don't fit in this world. I am an alien.
Yes, right.
At one point, I was like, I needed grounding. So becoming a scientist helped me in achieving that grounding, and then many sufferings and many things happened. And there was a moment where I was living in a war zone, working for the Colombian Navy in Colombia. And Colombia has been always a country of internal war, but now I was living literally in a jungle area where the war was pretty prominent. And then I was doing science because there's been an oil spill, and life brought me there.
Okay.
And that's the place where I met my husband.
There you go.
And he was like, this is the least place in the world where I thought I'd meet my wife. But of course, he made me under circumstances where I was not saying, oh, I know these things, or I have nothing. I was just like, and then, so it took a while for me, even though I always pray and meditated, he didn't know I could see beings or nothing. I kept that quiet as I was asked to do.
Okay.
So it took about 10, 11 years, something like that, to actually tell my husband these things. And look at how this was really, really beautiful and important, because it's all about walking your talk. Because sometimes we can say many things, and at the end of the day, is that who you truly are? In this case, after waiting that long, there was a moment where I started to write my book, and it was becoming more evident that I wanted to now let this out in the world. And then I told my husband one day in one of our anniversaries, I said, we were sitting in a restaurant, I said, you think that I'm crazy if I tell you that I can see beings of light, and that I knew I was going to meet you since I was 9 years old. because I started to have visions of the future since I was 4.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So, yeah, so he said to me, he looked at me with the big eyes and he said, look, after knowing you for 11 years, knowing the scientist you are, how grounded you are, how loving you are, the big heart that you have, the mother that you are, the wife that you are, and he's just saying all this stuff. If you tell me that you could move mountains, I believe you.
Right.
And he said to me, if anybody here is crazy, that's me, he said. So that was amazing. So from that moment, I was able to open up and tell him, look, this was the story of all the stuff
So when his consciousness was ready, then it was time to share, and then he resonated with it at that point, correct?
Yes, correct.
Okay, so he's a great support for you now, and your family is also support. So that's very wonderful that you have all this support.
Yes. So definitely not alone.
There you go. There you go. Some wonderful soul contracts you made with a group of wonderful beings. Yeah. So these beings of light, they still communicate with you throughout the day, or how does that go now?
Yes, all the time, because it's funny, the being so like people ask me like how you summon them or how they summon you or how these I said like no, nobody summons anybody. I said imagine that all the waves of internet, TV, radio, everything is here and now.
Yep.
The only thing you have to do is put your dial, I say like we are radios with an antenna. Put your dial in your antenna in the right place.
Yeah.
And everything is here and now.
So if you're in that frequency that your light beings are on, then they're just naturally there, correct?
Correct.
Right. And so they give you guidance and wisdom
They do
in your
all
day-to-day
the time.
life. Right.
Yes, all the time. And that's the way I've been able to work with people too. So I'm able to connect sometimes they say, oh, we're gossiping. No, but it's like I get to know how other people feel or what is needed for me to know in order to help the person at that moment to have clarity or healing or understanding or growth. So it's a really beautiful thing. That's why, but if people ask me, you are medium, you are psychic, you are this, you are that, I don't want any labels. I said, I'm just an instrument. I said, I'm just an instrument, a vehicle, and whatever is needed through this vehicle will come.
Fantastic.
Instrument will come. So
you work with clients, yes?
I do.
So
yes.
what exactly do you do with that? You give guidance and wisdom and
and I have a great number of tools to help people, especially guiding them to one, see their light, see that we are soul, that we and that we have to have that balance that we were talking before between the form and the formless. And
yes.
I give them tools to work with emotions, to work with trauma, to work with unresolved emotions, of course. Childhood, I see a lot of the childhood traumas. I'm able to see it. I'm able to even see the intergenerational burdens. I'm able to I receive all this information and I'm able to work with people. So it's very beautiful to do this work and be that instrument to be able to help to bring healing, understanding, clarity, and joy. Yeah,
it's all about living from joy. Yes. That's what I like. There's this channel teachings that I follow called Abraham Hicks.
Yes.
And I really love it. It really resonates with me more than many others because they just say your true nature is joy. Live from joy.
That's what I bring people to experience. How can we use and I use very practical, easy tools because I know life is already complicated and stressful. So I don't want to add one more layer. And I help people to, and I just mentioned it before, to how to integrate and include. I said it's about including everything and excluding nothing. How can we, from even the place of suffering, get wisdom? To the point that I don't call it post-traumatic stress disorder. I call it post-traumatic growth.
Okay.
How can we use all these? I said, and I love this sentence that says, don't waste the sufferings, your sufferings and the sufferings of your ancestors. Use them to grow.
Use them to grow.
Because if we see all these challenges as a way to it's always, don't stay in what has not worked. The fact that you're here right now shows that you are resilient, that you are strong, that you are intelligent, that your being has the wisdom, and maybe at the moment you didn't have the tools, so your system itself brought you to protect yourself.
Yep.
But it's how you use all that wisdom to now realize how amazing, powerful being you are. So I bring people to reconnect with their inner power.
Very good.
With their inner truth, with that place of joy. So, and it's a process, of course, too. It's a process. When there's a lot of suffering, we cannot expect to change things in 1 hour or in one. It's a process. Because it's the process of also being self-loving and self-compassionate and gentle with ourselves, and again, I call it the path of remembrance.
Remembering who you are. Huh?
Yes.
Very good. So if people want to book a session with you, how do they reach out to you? How do they do that? Where do they go?
They do it through my website, and my website is my name, just ingridhonkala.com.
Okay.
And I have a link called a tab called Work With Me. And I also do spiritual retreats and talks and classes, and I do all different things. I have a YouTube channel too where I share.
What's your YouTube channel called?
Just Ingrid Honkala.
Just
But
Ingrid Honkala.
I have a podcast called Be the Light.
Very good. Very good. Wonderful. Well, I'm going to subscribe to your channel for sure. And we'll put the link in the show notes to your website, to your YouTube channel, and we'll also put it underneath your face on here.
Thank you, Dale. And of course, I have a book too.
Oh, okay. Quickly tell us what's the book called?
Yes.
What's the book called, and where can they get it?
Yes. So the book is called A Brightly Guided Life: How a Scientist Learned to Hear Her Inner Wisdom.
Good.
And that's on Amazon. Can also, through my website, connect with the Amazon place. And a beautiful book, because I never thought about writing it in the first place. I thought that writing about me was egotistic, but it's when I received this clear message, Dale, that said to me, it's not about you.
Right.
But what you can do for others.
Very good.
Now I completely detached, and then the book happened. I said this book wanted to be written, and then it just happened, and the book started to write, and it's a autobiography of like my, not just the near-death experience, is my path of awakening and the challenges. And incredibly, people say to me, oh, you're writing a bestseller. And I said, no, I'm just writing, and if this book can help even one person, I am already a bestseller. That's how I felt when I was writing. And then when I started to receive the first email that says, your book saved my life.
Oh, that's that's wonderful.
Told me, your book this, your book that, I can relate. I said, okay.
Yeah, that's a best feeling. Absolutely, you did it. Well, thank you very much for being a light in the world. I appreciate you. I think everyone does. And if there's one last thing before we wrap things up, there's one last thing you'd like to share with the world, what would it be? Little nugget of wisdom.
I think it would be gratitude. Practice gratitude. Gratitude elevates us. Gratitude connects us. And this is a teaching I received one day when the being soul light said to me, Ingrid, you don't imagine how grateful everyone would be if they realize that for you to exist, trillions and trillions and trillions of subatomic particles have to be in agreement.
Wow.
They say you are a divine intention. So nowadays, when I even see a pen, when I'm drinking my water, anything, I'm like, trillions and trillions of subatomic particles agree to be this pen. And at the same time, this pen was created because someone was connected with the creative thinking of the universe.
Yeah.
And I'm grateful with this. And I'm grateful with the water I drink. And I'm grateful with this temple that I have. Am I grateful because my experiences bring me to these realizations? So it's like experience gratitude. Gratitude is one of the highest vibrational frequencies because you are grateful with the things that make you feel great. And the things that make you feel great are the things that you love. Gratitude and love are synonyms.
Very good.
So
thank you so much. That's great. I love it. All right. Thank you, Ingrid, for being a guest on the Soul Inspire podcast on this edition. We appreciate you. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me. I'm very, very honored and grateful.
Okay, thank you so much. All right, bye-bye. And see everyone next time on the Soul Inspire podcast. The Soul Inspire podcast is brought to you by DaleCross.net. Discover the freedom, bliss, and ecstasy within you. At DaleCross.net, I can help connect you with your soul's purpose, passion, and mission. Your soul signed up for something great. Discover what it is with the tools I offer. Book a free one-on-one consultation now at DaleCross.net and live your greatness.